For 28 years, the world wondered, was there a secret behind JonBenet Ramsey's death that no one knew? And now, in a shocking turn of events, her brother finally speaks out. But what he reveals will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. In December 1996, the world was rocked by the brutal death of JonBenet Ramsey, a 6-year-old beauty queen whose life was tragically cut short. The little girl, with her bright smile and shimmering pageant dresses, was found lifeless in the basement of her family's home in Boulder, Colorado. The holiday season, meant to be filled with joy, turned into a never-ending nightmare for her family. What followed was a media frenzy, with constant speculation and suspicion cast upon the Ramsey family. But despite relentless media scrutiny and years of painful public questioning, JonBenet's brother, Burke Ramsey, remained silent. Until now. For 28 years, Burke, just 9 years old at the time of the tragedy, lived under the shadow of suspicion, even as he mourned the loss of his sister. The media accused him of knowing more than he let on. His every word, his every action, was analyzed by the public, leaving him a target of unrelenting speculation. Now, as an adult, Burke is ready to speak. In an emotional interview, his voice cracks as he recounts the unimaginable pain of that fateful night. He remembers standing at his sister's funeral, the small casket and the haunting image of her eye, forever frozen in his mind. The weight of loss was overwhelming, yet the world never truly let him grieve in peace. What will Burke reveal about that night? Could the answers lie in the silence he's carried for nearly 3 decades? Burke Ramsey's silence over the years hasn't just been a personal choice. It was a necessity. As a child, he found himself thrust into the public eye, his every move scrutinized in the aftermath of JonBenet's death. People whispered about him, wondering why he hadn't woken up during the chaos that unfolded that fateful night. Questions flooded in. Why didn't he go downstairs to see what was happening? Why didn't he seem curious? These questions haunted Burke, and the media's relentless speculation made it worse. His family, already grieving the loss of JonBenet, was left to battle the world's assumptions. The pain of losing his sister was only compounded by the weight of being seen as a potential suspect. Burke remembers the night of JonBenet's death with a clarity that still shakes him to his core. He was just a child, confused and unsure of what was happening in the house. His memories are hazy, but he remembers the unsettling feeling that something terrible was unfolding downstairs. He stayed in his bed, trusting that his parents would handle the situation. Burke never imagined that he would be the subject of intense media scrutiny for something he didn't understand. But now, after nearly 3 decades of silence, Burke has chosen to speak. In his interview with Dr. Phil, he finally opens up, sharing the emotional toll it has taken on him to carry the weight of the world's judgment while still grieving the loss of his sister.
The media basically made our lives crazy. I mean, it's hard to miss the cameras and news trucks in your front yard.
In the days, weeks, and years following JonBenet Ramsey's tragic death, the media seized on every detail, feeding the public's insatiable appetite for scandal and mystery. But as the cameras rolled, the Ramseys' grief became a spectacle. Every moment of their lives was dissected, from their public appearances to their private conversations. For Burke, this media storm was an inescapable nightmare. Rumors swirled, speculation ran wild. Many believed that someone inside the family was responsible for JonBenet's death. The authorities seemed just as obsessed with the Ramseys as the public was. Instead of focusing solely on finding the truth, investigators began casting suspicion on the Ramseys, particularly Burke. As a child, Burke had to endure the unimaginable stress of being accused without evidence. No one had answers, but the media had plenty of questions and plenty of accusations. Why hadn't Burke woken up when his sister was in danger? Why wasn't he more curious, more upset? These questions were relentlessly thrown his way, creating a toxic environment for someone so young.
It wasn't just the police who made Burke feel like a suspect. The public did too. He was painted as a mysterious figure, a child with too many unanswered questions surrounding him. The silence of the family was seen as guilt. For Burke, being accused of something he didn't understand was devastating. As he looked at the headlines, seeing his name associated with his sister's death, the weight of the accusations crushed him. But in the face of such pressure, He remained silent. Until now. Amid the unrelenting media circus, the Ramsey family was trapped in a nightmare that no one should ever have to endure. Not only had they lost their beloved daughter, JonBenet, but they also found themselves branded with suspicion by both the public and the authorities. For John and Patsy Ramsey, the burden of grief was compounded by the accusation that they might have played a role in their daughter's death. As a father, John Ramsey struggled to comprehend the depth of the tragedy, but he was also faced with the heartbreaking reality that the world seemed to view him and his wife as guilty until proven innocent. The pressure was unbearable. With every passing day, it felt like the investigation focused more on blaming the family than uncovering the truth. John vividly recalls how the police treated him, constantly questioning, constantly speculating, without ever considering that someone else might be responsible. Patsy, too, faced the torment of being under constant scrutiny. The media portrayed her as a mother who pushed her daughter into pageants, painting a picture of an obsessive mother who might have been responsible for the crime.
Patsy wanted her daughter to have the same opportunities she did. I don't believe she pushed her at all. JonBenet seemed to like dressing up in these beautiful dresses, and she liked the attention.
In truth, Patsy had never pressured JonBenet into competing. JonBenet loved the pageants, and it was something the family did together. But the world didn't care about the truth. They wanted a story, and the Ramseys became the convenient villains. Even in the face of these painful accusations, John and Patsy did their best to protect Burke, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy for him. But how do you protect a child when the whole world is watching, judging every action and every word? The family was broken, not just by the loss of JonBenet, but by the relentless, unfounded suspicion surrounding them. As the investigation into JonBenet's death unfolded, one of the most puzzling aspects was the ransom note found inside the Ramsey home. It was long, detailed, and chilling, demanding exactly $118,000, a sum that eerily matched the amount of a recent bonus that John Ramsey had received. What made the note even more bizarre was that it was written on a notepad from inside the house, one of Patsy Ramsey's own stationery sets. This strange detail raised immediate questions. Who could write such a specific ransom note in the middle of a crime scene using materials that were readily available to the family? The ransom note raised more questions than answers, and investigators couldn't make sense of it. Was it a botched kidnapping attempt? Or was it part of a more twisted plan? The note seemed to suggest the latter, but no one could figure out the real motive. Even more perplexing was the fact that the note was detailed, yet the crime scene showed no signs of forced entry. This led many to believe the perpetrator had to be someone with inside knowledge, someone who was familiar with the family's daily life, their habits, and the layout of their home.
This inconsistency pointed to the heartbreaking possibility that JonBenet's death was not a random act of violence, but something far more personal. The absence of forced entry and the specific nature of the ransom note cast a shadow of suspicion over the family. It seemed like every new clue was just another dead end. As the investigation stalled, the authorities turned their focus back to the Ramsey family, despite mounting evidence suggesting the presence of an intruder. And so, as the months turned into years, the case remained unresolved, leaving the Ramsey family to carry the weight of suspicion while the real answers lay hidden just out of reach. As the investigation grew more complicated, Burke Ramsey became the center of media attention. The press had already painted him as a potential suspect, feeding on every detail, no matter how insignificant. But one of the most intense moments came when Burke was brought into a police interrogation room. At the time, he was just a child, yet his every word and action were examined by investigators eager to crack the case. The questions came fast and furious, with officers probing for any sign of guilt.
Burke, still traumatized by the events, was questioned with the assumption that he might have known more than he let on. The police even suggested the possibility that he had accidentally harmed his sister and his parents had covered it up. Burke, understandably confused and overwhelmed, denied any involvement. He had been asleep during the chaos, unsure of what was happening downstairs. He had trusted his parents to handle things and had never imagined that the night would end in tragedy. Despite his denials, the public and the media twisted Burke's reactions. His discomfort in the interview, including moments when he appeared to smile, was misinterpreted by some as evidence of guilt. Experts later explained that these expressions were likely signs of nervousness and confusion, not happiness or satisfaction. But once again, the media's portrayal of Burke as the prime suspect clouded the investigation. Burke's story was never truly heard, until now. After 28 years of silence, he finally speaks out, shedding light on the pain and suffering he's endured. His account adds a new layer to the mystery, and perhaps a crucial piece of the puzzle. After years of silence, Burke Ramsey finally agreed to speak publicly about the tragic death of his sister JonBenet. In an emotional interview with Dr. Phil, Burke opened up about the profound impact the case had on him and his family. For the first time, he shared his thoughts on that devastating night and the years of emotional turmoil that followed. Burke's voice trembled as he described standing at his sister's funeral, the tiny casket in front of him, and the image of JonBenet's lifeless body forever etched in his memory. He spoke of the confusion he felt as a 9-year-old boy, not understanding the gravity of death, yet sensing that something incredibly wrong had happened. One image stuck with him, JonBenet's eye, which appeared strange and different in death, a haunting detail he couldn't forget. When his father, John Ramsey, explained that JonBenet was now in heaven, Burke, still just a child, broke down in tears, feeling the weight of the loss. But even in the face of grief, the media never let him mourn in peace. His emotions were dissected, his actions analyzed, and he was thrust into the center of a public spectacle he was too young to understand. In his interview, Burke expressed the pain of being misjudged by the world. For years, he carried the burden of suspicion, unsure of how to process both the loss of his sister and the false accusations aimed at him. His emotional reveal brought clarity to his side of the story, but it also raised more questions, ones that still linger in the hearts of the public. Despite decades of media attention, public scrutiny, and an endless cycle of false accusations, the true perpetrator remains unknown. The case, still open and unsolved, is a constant source of pain and frustration for the Ramsey family, especially JonBenet's father, John Ramsey. In the years since his daughter's death, John has never given up on finding the truth. He's faced the unimaginable loss of his daughter, the unfair judgment of his family, and the endless questioning of his role in her death. But his fight for justice has never wavered. John has been vocal about the failures of the Boulder Police Department in handling the case. He believes that the police, in their early missteps and focus on the family, missed vital evidence and potential leads. In 2008, DNA testing helped clear the Ramseys of suspicion, identifying an unknown male DNA sample on JonBenet's clothing. But this breakthrough didn't lead to an arrest. It merely raised more questions. Who was this unknown man, and why hasn't justice been served? The case seemed to go cold despite the promising possibilities presented by advances in forensic science. John remains determined. He continues to push for the re-examination of DNA evidence using modern technology. With the hope that new tools will finally bring justice, John refuses to give up on his daughter's memory. But the painful reality is that the longer the case remains unsolved, the more it feels like the truth may never come to light. In recent years, new advancements in DNA technology have provided a glimmer of hope for JonBenet Ramsey's case. John Ramsey, who has tirelessly advocated for justice, believes that modern forensic methods, specifically genetic genealogy, could finally hold the key to uncovering the identity of the person responsible for his daughter's death. The 2008 DNA breakthrough, which cleared the Ramsey family of any involvement, revealed that an unknown male's DNA was present on JonBenet's clothing. This discovery led many to believe that someone outside the family was responsible for the crime. However, despite this evidence, investigators have yet to identify a suspect. John's frustration grew as the years passed, with the case appearing to stall. But then, in 2018, the arrest of the Golden State Killer through genetic genealogy reignited John's hope. This new DNA technology, which allows investigators to trace family trees and identify suspects by comparing shared genetic markers, has opened up new possibilities for cold cases. John became convinced that if the same methods were applied to JonBenet's case, they might finally find a match. He has repeatedly called for the release of the DNA evidence, hoping that a fresh perspective, paired with modern technology, would lead to the breakthrough they desperately need. Despite his continued pleas, the Boulder Police Department has yet to agree to re-examine the evidence with these updated techniques. The delay is frustrating, but John remains resolute. He believes that with the right tools and the right determination, justice can still be achieved. And that, for him, is the only way to finally bring peace to it. As the years pass, the haunting questions surrounding JonBenet Ramsey's death remain unanswered. The pain of losing his daughter, compounded by the public's harsh judgment and the failure of the authorities to properly investigate, has left John Ramsey with a heavy heart. Yet, despite everything, he continues his fight for justice, not for revenge, but for closure and for the truth to be told. John's plea to the Boulder Police Department for access to the DNA evidence remains at the forefront of his efforts. He believes that advancements in forensic science could provide the breakthrough the case desperately needs. In a world where cold cases are increasingly being solved through new DNA technologies, John knows that the answers are within reach, but only if the evidence is given the attention it deserves. For John, it's about honoring his daughter's memory, not just as a victim, but as a lively, vibrant little girl whose life was tragically stolen. He remembers her not as a symbol of loss, but as the girl who loved to dance, laugh, and bring joy to everyone around her. The world, he feels, must remember JonBenet in that way. Despite his sorrow, he refuses to let the case fade into the shadows. He has kept his promise to his daughter. He will never stop searching for the truth. But with each passing year, the emotional weight grows heavier. The final question remains, will JonBenet ever receive the justice she deserves? And will the world finally know who took her life?